Hey guys, so here it is. This is my Singer 1200-1. This is probably my most prized and rarest of all of my Singer machines. Took me a long time to find this one. As you guys know, they're extremely rare. Singer, I think, only has on record 6,500 of the 201 of the 1200-1s made. And it gets a little murky because this is a 1938 model. They don't have manufacturing information on the 1200-1 prior to 1951. The 1200-1 serial numbers were mixed in with the 201 because they're the same machine basically in the same casting. So there's really no way of knowing how many of these things are out there. But given the scarcity of them and how rarely they show up, I would say there's probably less than 50,000 of these machines and made, and far less in circulation, especially in this kind of condition. So I thought I would do a video kind of overviewing some of the things that make this particular Singer different from a 201, which was the 201 is Singer's probably greatest straight stitch sewing machine that they ever made. Hands down. I've used every single one across the line all the way up to the early 60s, which I think at that point the quality started to decline. But anyway, so let's start. So as you can see, this thing's built. It's built into its own artisan table. They sold this and marketed this for light industrial use, for tailors, and for dressmakers. There's rumors that Rolls-Royce used the 1200-1 in their production for interior panels on their vehicles. Who knows how accurate that is. It's just a rumor going around. But anyway, so it's marketed more towards professionals. It has a knee lift. It has their power stand, which is a hollow-legged table. They also made a treadle version that looks almost identical. But you can see that this one, pull you out, kind of move you around here. This one this is actually the motor controller, similar to your foot pedal, except it's actuated a little bit differently, and then it has a large treadle base. You can see so originally this whole thing was a gloss brown. It's just really unattractive. I stripped it and repainted it white, did in the gold lettering there, and then it also added some water slide decals. That was not stock. I added those. This is actually from a Singer Bentwood case, and you can see this is the decaling here on the original Singer Bentwood case. And I use this Singer Bentwood case as a cover on this machine when I'm not using it. So that's where that water slide decal is. And I polished everything. So you can see the base. If you find one of these, I'd really recommend redoing the base if you're capable. It'll really upgrade and modernize the look of it. And this is hollow steel too, so it's not terribly heavy like the cast iron counterparts. This section is cast iron, but this is totally hollow steel, hollow leg steel. So, and here's the knee lift. Now, once you go and you start using a knee lift, you will never be able to go back to a machine that doesn't have one. This is a problem for me in that I moved over to industrial machines, and I can't use domestic machines anymore that don't have a knee lift. It's just, if it doesn't have a knee lift, it's off the table for me. I can't use it. And that's part of the reason why the only domestic machines I use now are Berninas. And yeah, they're great machines, but the biggest factor for me is the knee lift. It's hard to explain. It's like having a third hand while you're sewing. And once you get used to that, it's difficult to go back to a machine that doesn't have it. This particular table also, it doesn't come in a brown stained finish like this. It's like a gold, natural, like lacquered or shellacked finish. It's just pretty unsightly, and they had like a decorative routing around the edges. I ended up cutting this down on my table saw, rounding the edges over, refinishing the tabletop, sanded it down, and reapplied a stain, and then did a Danish oil finish with a wax paste. So you still have the feeling. You can hear. You still have the feeling of natural wood and the warmth of the natural wood without having a layered finish like a polyurethane. So you still retain that nice wood look and feel. So I suggest if you go that route, do an oil finish with a wax. You'll be a lot happier. Normally I don't have the drawer in here, but this is like their industrial style drawer, and you can remove it. It's held on via a bracket below. And then I just cut it so it's totally flush here on the front. And then underneath, this is a drop leaf here. So you pull this around and that drops out of the way to make the bed a little bit narrower if you don't need the support. So that's the overview on the table. They call this their power stand, and having the big treadle is really nice. But so let me grab the machine here. This is a 38 model, so you'll notice that it has the decorative scroll work faceplate, and it also has the chromed lip around the hand wheel. That's an easy way to identify a pre-50s machine, are those two things. Post-1950, they had the striated lines, and they had a different badge. Let me put you in the tripod here, and I'll move you over. So this has a potted motor, and you can see the knee lift mechanism on the back. That's what really makes this thing so unique compared to a 201. It does have the potted motor on the back, so it's a direct drive via a worm gear that drives the actual upper shaft. So this machine, no belt, super smooth, just like the 201 or like a 1591 with their potted motor that everybody loves. They are really nice. You sacrifice some of the top speed, but it's worth it really for the maintenance and the motor feel. It's just, they're pretty excellent. So let me drop this down a little bit more. Sorry guys, I know I'm like 6 minutes in. I haven't even started sewing on it yet, but I want to give you an overview because these are really rare machines, so you're not going to see these very often. So I figured I'd do the full walk around on it. So let me just sew with it, and then I'll go over the details on the machine. This is a full rotary hook, no bobbin case. It's a drop-in bobbin. There are gears, bevel gears here, and below the pillar that drive the lower shaft. It's a very simple lower mechanism here. You can see underneath the machine. Super robust, but super simple. You just have a single drive shaft bevel gear here and here, and then you just have the rocker arm assembly for the feed dogs. Really simple, smooth, and robust for what it is. And not having the bobbin is super nice. A lot of people get hung up on these bobbins on some of these other like class 15 machines. This one threads right to left, which is different than most others where they thread from left to right. So that's just something you have to get used to. And yeah, the rotary hook is just, unlike most other machines where the hook rocks back and forth, when you have that change in directional momentum, you get movement in the machine. This one, because the gears everything's low mass and high speed spinning, you don't have any movement in these machines. They're so quiet and they're so smooth. And the full rotation, nothing's ever changing directions, so it's just so much smoother. You don't get that kind of vibration that you get in like a class 15 machine where the hook rocks back and forth like in like a Singer 1591 or a Bernina. Any of the free arm machines have that oscillating hook. Neckies. This is full rotary hook, which is phenomenal. So I have a 14 needle in here with T30 thread. That's like your standard all-purpose thread. This is Gutermann, which I like. And here's just some like, I think this is like Kona cotton or something. So let's start with, we'll just do 4 layers. And you can just see how this thing runs. So you have so much slow speed control. And that's probably another thing I didn't even notice I did. So you could see when I went to put the material under, my hands don't go anywhere. So it's like having a third hand in that you can position the material without having to touch the presser foot lever. So it's so nice to be able to reposition. And then you can see the slow speed. Look at this slow speed control. I mean, all you hear is just that, the hook catching the thread and forming the stitch. And you can see here, the stitches are perfect. I probably have a little bit too much upper tension, so I just touch the style up here, turn it a little bit, and that will drop the tension on the upper thread and get a more balanced stitch. And you can see here, perfect stitch formation, top and bottom, and that's like the speed you normally sew at. And then here's high speed. drop it back down to low. Okay. Take that out. See the knee lift? I'm telling you, I don't even think about it anymore. So you can see the stitch formation is just perfect. And let's go 8 layers of cotton. You can see the stitches, that's 8 layers here. Let's get that to focus. The top and bottom, the stitch formation on these machines is just so good. And you see the maneuverability here. Oh, I didn't hold the thread, just lost it. The maneuverability here is so good on these machines because you have a really narrow foot and you have really narrow feed dogs. So you're not getting a lot of friction from this presser foot, whereas on these modern machines where they do the wide zigzag, they have to have a really wide foot. And what happens is you have so much pressure and friction dragging on the material from that foot that you just can't steer it very well. It's like, imagine like the steerability of like a motorcycle, really narrow and 2 wheels versus, you know, a double wide truck. It's much better on these narrower feet because the pivot point, the pivot is much smaller, this area here. And the feed dogs on these machines are so good because they use the sawtooth style feed dogs, where they're industrial style. They're pretty aggressive, but they're not going to mar your material. Let's jump in here and take a look so you can see. Wait for it to focus. Sorry. You see how you have these feed dogs? The modern style are diamond shaped, so they're designed to feed equally forward and back. This one has a bias towards better feeding as you sew normally. They don't work as well pushing the material back and reverse, but you're only reversing for a small portion of the time, usually to lock stitch in the beginning and end of a sewing run. So these feed really, really well. They feed material really well, and the feed height is adjustable, and you can drop the feed dogs for free motion embroidery. So it's a perk. Not only that, but you can adjust the presser tension on the machine, unlike most modern machines. So you really want to dial that presser foot tension back as much as possible just to keep the material from lifting as the needle exits. You don't need any more than that. The less tension, the better in most scenarios. Just less friction, and allows the feed dogs to do their job more effectively. So let's jump over to, this is some like outdoor canvas that you get at Joann's. And it's like comparable to like denim. So let's fold it this way. Let's do 4 layers of this. Now the penetrating power on these machines, of course, is really good. It's really good, but I would not recommend using a machine like this for sewing leather. Well, I would say vegetable tan leather. You can sew chrome tan leather on this. That's like garment weight leather, but chrome tan leather, like what you would see on like the really stiff stuff that you can mold with water. That's vegetable tan. Like on belts, you would not want to be sewing that material on this machine there, and I wouldn't want to see a machine like this be used in that way. It's too much for the machine. It'll handle it, but your wear and tear on the machine is going to be too much. You can see that's 4 layers, and it just feeds just so well. And the stitch formation is just so good. So that's 4 layers. Let's go to 8. And here's the point, is that it feeds really well, but the stitch balance and quality is really good. Top and bottom, that's 4 layers. Then you can jump up to 8. Let's go in reverse too. See, I don't have to push it through. It just naturally feeds the material. That's 8 layers of a heavy canvas. So that's really the thing, is yes, this thing will penetrate through a lot of material, but it feeds really well. So let's take a look at the stitches on that. That's 8 layers of canvas, and the stitch formation and balance is perfect. You cannot tell between the 4 layers that we had done and the 8. I didn't have to adjust any of the tensions. The tensions are dialed in here perfectly. And yeah, it'll do 16 layers. I mean, it will sew through that much material. It's kind of abusing the machine. I'll show you that it'll do it, but under normal circumstances, I wouldn't. And you can see here in situations like this, the presser foot lift is so nice because you can get it into position, let go. Now, I usually start, if you're going to sew through a lot of material, start with the needle buried in the machine, and that will give you the advantage of gaining the momentum of that needle stroke, so you have momentum in the hand wheel that'll help drive the next stitch. If you try to start with the needle just like a couple millimeters above the material, you're not going to have time for that motor to get up to speed and get enough torque to drive through the material in some cases. So you start with the needle down, and you can see it drives and feeds 16 layers. Okay? I mean, that's crazy. So let's take a look here. Now, the thing you have to be careful of in situations like this is needle deflection. So this is so thick that basically the needle in its stroke can drive into the material while the feed dogs still are kind of moving the material, because you're so high up in the feed stroke or so high up in the needle stroke that can happen sometimes. And that's why you'll get needle strikes on the press or on the needle plate, is because you're sewing. I mean, look at that. It's as thick as my finger. So, and it'll sew it and feed it no problem. And you cannot tell between 16 layers, top and bottom, or the 8 layers or the 4 layers. And I never touched the tension in all that time. And then you can see here, this is some vinyl, like a marine grade outdoor upholstery vinyl, and it'll do 2 layers really well. The thing with this stuff is that it's difficult to feed because it wants to stick on the bed of the machine. You can see there, just perfect stitches. Just perfect. So let's go a little bit quicker and pull it out. Okay. So look at that. Really good. Now let's go to 4. It'll do 4 too. This is really thick. I mean, this is thick stuff. Again, I don't know if I'd push it like this. Under normal circumstances, but it'll do it. And then it'll go in reverse. And it'll go forward again. So there you go. That's the 4 layers. Here's the stitch on the top. See if is that focusing? Yeah. And you can see the reverse is perfectly matched. The stitch length is perfectly matched to the forward feed. So not a lot of machines will do that. They had to be really finely adjusted to be able to get that forward and reverse matched up perfectly. And you can see that's 4 layers there. The stitch is perfect, and that's 2, and you can't tell the difference. So really phenomenal machine. Some of the other differences that differentiate this, let me zoom out here, from say like any of the other Singers. One is that this is a full rotary hook machine. Very few of the Singer line are full rotary hook machines. You have the 221, which is the featherweight is. You have the 115, which was their first rotary hook machine. But that's a early predecessor to this. I mean, they're not even really that similar. But that was their first rotary hook machine. You have a 301, and there are a couple others. But this, and of course the 201. This is without a doubt the smoothest running of all of those machines, the quietest. It's full steel. There's no plastic in here. This is absolutely robust, just phenomenally bomb-proof, and really fine controls on everything. Your stitch length, super forward and reverse, really fine controls. You have your limit here, this little dial that moves. That's your stitch length limiter. You have a switch here for the light. This is one of the few machines that has a forward mounted light. Most of them are mounted on the back. And of the vintage, this is the only one that has it mounted on the front. The Singer 201 does, and the 301 do. But this is the only of the cast iron bodied machines that has it mounted on the front, integrated wiring within the actual body of the machine. Really fine adjustment mechanism for the thread tension, upper thread tension, presser foot tension. You have adjustable pressure for adjusting the bobbin tension. You want this to be pretty light, as light as possible, but still putting a little bit of tension on it. So that's really finely adjusted. You have your automatic bobbin winder here that disengages when it's full automatically. This is the access to the brushes here. The brushes here are here, and then these are grease wicks that come up underneath to lubricate this shaft. Overall, this is just it's such a good machine. It's difficult to explain if you haven't used a vintage machine, because the feel of these things compared to other more modern machines, it's just night and day. And having the knee lift for the presser foot is just, I mean, it's so good. Not only that, but the narrow foot and the open toe gives you just such good visibility compared to a closed toe standard foot that you'd see on other machines. The open toe, you can see where you're going to be stitching. When you mark a line, you watch that line all the way right up to the needle, unlike other machines. To the left of the presser foot or the needle, you have a 1/4 inch spacing on this toe, the wide toe, and then you have an 1/8 inch spacing on the narrow toe. So if you can put a guide right up to the side here and literally get within an 1/8 of an inch of the edge. So it's perfect for top stitching, but also for doing zippers. You have your accessory hole mounts here. And this is a low shank machine, so you can remove this foot quickly, and you can swap it out with any of the other any modern foot that you may have already. You can put on this machine, and any other vintage foot. They're all the standard's pretty much low shank for, like, I'd say 90% of the machines on the market. There are a few that are unique, like the Berninas, and some other of the Kenmores and stuff are high shank. But yeah, so you have the low shank presser foot. Uses a standard needle, 705H or a 15X1. It just depends on the country of origin for your needle, depending on the nomenclature, HAX1, etc. So anyway, so yeah, so that's the machine. You do have to oil these, and that's just part of the maintenance on them. Let me show you the internals look like. You do have to oil them, and there are oiling ports throughout the machine. And that's just, that's what you have with. If you're not going to use synthetic plastic parts, you're going to need to oil these things because you have metal hardened steel on hardened steel. So you want to make sure they're all lubricated. You can see how basic this, unthread this. So you just thread those moving parts. Basically, the most important are the needle bar and the hook. So you want to put a drop of oil here and here almost every time you use the machine. Those are the most critical parts. But beyond that, it's just every once in a while. You don't need to oil the gear. So I have the manual. You can look that up online. It's helpful to see where all the oiling ports are. But once you deal with these machines for long enough, you can just kind of know what's what and where you need to oil and what needs to be done more frequently than others. So anyway, I just thought I would share. This is my 1938 Singer 1200-1 full rotary hook, horizontal drop and bobbin sewing machine from Singer. Definitely one of their best. So good luck finding one. Hopefully you do. They are awesome, awesome machines. Thanks, guys.